Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to share with you my recipe on Italian sausage soup. Though usually by the time mine's all done cooking, it's more like a casserole in a pot. But anyway, it's one of my very favorite soups to make, and I haven't made it in years, but with now being able to order from Costco from their new section that's cold and frozen delivery, and I did a video just about that and the other forms of ordering from Costco online that are available to a lot of people. I'll link to that video down below if you're interested. But anyway, with that, I was able to get some Italian sausage, which I have not had in a long time. So I bought a big package of it, froze up most of it. So I was able to make some updates to my recipe since it had been years. So I'm going to be typing this recipe up, and I'll be putting the link to the written recipe in the description box down below. Anyone, no matter who you are, should be able to click on that link and open it right up, and that way you can copy and paste. And I'll also be putting some photos into that post as well. So I start with my big pot, and I put in 4 cups of water. Now, if you happen to have any kind of broth, whether it be pork, chicken, beef, you can use that. But what I did was I even though I have a lot of turkey broth in the freezer, I didn't really want that turkey flavor in this. So I prefer to go for the beef flavor. And I like to use what you can get at Costco, this Better Than Bouillon, and it's all organic. This is really good. They have the chicken and the beef, and now they have a roast beef one. But anyway, what you can do is add, with the 4 cups of water, you can put in up to 4 tablespoons. And what I do is I just take just a regular tablespoon, not a measuring tablespoon, your regular tablespoon. So I did 2 heaping spoonfuls into the 4 cups of water. And then you're going to want at least a cup of some kind of pasta. It doesn't matter which one you use. It's going to be a matter of choice. I used to make this with the little shells. I really liked using the shells in that. I didn't have any shells on hand, so I used the spiral pasta in this one. But you can use orzo or whatever is your favorite type of pasta to use in soups. It's totally up to you what you want to add to that. So at least a cup. I'm pretty sure I used more than a cup of that because, you know, we like a lot of pasta, and that's part of the reason mine ends up turning out more like a casserole. And then I've always made this in the past with broccoli. I usually get like a frozen broccoli, or you can take a fresh broccoli and make sure they're little small pieces. So if I had to chop them up, I would, and I'd throw that in there. But since I still am trying to use up a lot of the zucchini from the garden, I went ahead and used zucchini in place of broccoli. So I just diced it up into small pieces and threw that in. So about 2 cups of that. And then you're going to want 2 cups of tomatoes in whatever form you want. So you want it to be somewhat liquidy. Now what I did was I took my garden grown tomatoes, and so I just used my little hand food processor and then chopped them up in that. So I still got a lot of the liquid from the tomatoes, plus had pieces of it in there. But you can also just use a tomato sauce if you don't want tomato pieces in there. The whole idea of this is by the time it's all done, when it's cooking, it should smell a lot like pizza and even be just like pizza in a bowl. And then as far as garlic, you can use dried, you can use granulated, or like in this case, I decided to use fresh because I have a bunch of it on hand. So I chop that up and throw that in, and the amount of garlic has got to be totally tailored to you. I recommend going with at least 5 garlic cloves. I think I used about 10 in mine. So chop that up and throw it in there. Another option is, if you want a little spice, is I did go ahead and chop up some of my Chinese 5-color peppers, rather small, and threw those in there. And you can even add some sweet peppers to that, either instead of or as well as, because it adds a nice flavor too. So again, add any vegetables that sound good to you. And of course you're going to want onion. If you're adding dried onion, because I usually have a lot of the Mother Earth Products dried onion on hand, you can do a 1/4 cup of that. Or if you've got fresh onion, I'd say at least a 1/2 cup of fresh onion chopped up. And then another thing to add are some mushrooms, fresh or dried. I would say maybe about a 1/2 cup of the dried mushrooms, and maybe a little bit more if you're using the fresh mushrooms in there. Sliced, just slice them up. You can chop them smaller if you want. I like to have the slices in there myself. I also get my dried mushrooms from Mother Earth Products. It's one of the other things I like to purchase from them. And then for your herbs, I say, and these are going to be minimum measurements. I usually go more than this, but I always like to give you a minimum to start with. A teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon of basil, a half teaspoon of fennel seed, and another half teaspoon of rosemary. Again, those are just minimal measurements to start with. You can always add more if you want more flavor in that soup. All the spices, the vegetables, the pasta, the water should all be in the pot. You're not going to add the sausage yet. We'll get to that in a minute. Put all those things, other things together in the pot, and then start bringing it to a boil. And then as you're waiting for that to heat up, go ahead and take your sausage, take them out of the skins. I just pull them out in little pieces at a time, and then sort of make them like little meatballs, basically, is what I'm doing. Now, if you already just have like a ground sausage, then just do the same thing. Just gather it up into pieces. You want them whatever size is best for you. You can have them as big as an inch, which a lot of mine were. You can have them smaller. It's just going to depend on what you think sounds best. And then have those ready to go. And then once your soup is boiling, that's when you want to start adding the pieces of sausage. And the reason I do it that way is so that the sausage can start cooking right away along the outside, so that the pieces do not stick together in the pot as they're cooking. And then I just start putting them in one at a time and letting them cook. Stir a little bit, throw in some more, and keep doing that. And then another thing I almost forgot to mention is, if you've been making your dried mixed greens blend with whatever healthy greens you have growing, like your kale and your dandelion leaves, your chicory leaves, your grape leaves, strawberry leaves, whatever they are, and you've been making your mixed greens, I would say add about a handful of these to your pot. I try to get those into every meal that I make, whether it be a sauce, a casserole, a soup, or anything. I try to throw those in there, so that, or even a gravy, so that we're getting more of those greens and all the nutrients that are in those into our diet as much as possible. So anyway, after you've got all that in there and you want to lower the heat down to a simmer, just let that cook until everything in there, especially the sausage, is cooked all the way through. The sausage, the noodles, your whatever vegetables that you added to it. And then that last few minutes, if you like black olives, that's the time you want to add the black olives. You can put them in sooner. I just don't like to have them cook even more, because when you're adding canned black olives, they're already well cooked. So I just put them in there last so that they can heat through, and then I serve it. So I use the whole 6.5 ounce can. In fact, what I did was I opened the can up first, and then another thing I forgot to share earlier is I just went ahead and dumped all the liquid from the can into the pot with the water, the tomatoes, and everything else, and then let that cook in there, because that way you're adding even more flavor to the noodles and vegetables as they're cooking. Then added the strained out olives to the soup once it was all done cooking. And then also, don't forget, if you have dried zucchini, it's later in the year, you don't have any fresh zucchini, add your dried zucchini. You would use about maybe a cup of the dried or less, instead of 2 whole cups like you would with the fresh zucchini, because all the moisture, remember, has been removed from that. And while your soup is cooking, get yourself some homemade bread going. What I've been doing a lot lately with my homemade bread is doing a black seed, and then I use a mix of whole grain flour that I grind myself, and then an organic unbleached white flour. I do have an older video out there, and I think I show in that one how I add seeds. But a black seed has been one of my favorite things to add. Sometimes I'll mix it in with all the other seeds, or just use it by itself. It adds a little bit of flavor as well as a lot of great nutrition. So that's what I did when I made the bread to go with the soup this time. And I'll link to that old video on my basic bread recipe down below. And by the way, that's the same recipe. I just switch it up according to what I'm doing as far as what seeds and stuff I'm adding to it. It's the same one I use to make pizza crusts, dinner rolls, and so on. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and this recipe, and that you'll give it a try. Don't forget, if you want the written form, go ahead and click on that link I'll be putting in the description box down below. Remember, you got to click on show more right down here below my channel name, or if you're on a smart device, that little triangle you'll see over here down at the bottom corner on this side, right under there, and that'll open the description box so you can find those links. Okay then, thanks for watching, take care, and God bless.